Good morning. My name is Michael Santos. I'm the founder of Prison Professors, and today I want to respond to some questions we received from an individual who's about to surrender to prison. Since I think a lot of people may have such questions, I thought I would just share my screen with those questions and show how I would respond to them. So I'm just going to share my screen here. And the first question concerns pre-sentence investigation reports. He wanted to know, how could he make sure that when he surrenders, the prison system, the Bureau of Prisons, has the pre-sentence investigation report, the statement of reasons, and all of the information that they will need to accept him and bring him into the community? Now, he is referring to a previous article I wrote from quite some time ago describing the journey in prison, is how sometimes people surrender, and when they surrender, the prison's not ready, so the prison administrators will put them in the hold. When I say they're not ready, they don't have all of the receiving documents. So if somebody's surrendering to a minimum security camp, the administrators don't want to put them into the camp until they've confirmed that this person really belongs in minimum security and not in a secure prison. And their typical response is to lock that individual in segregated housing. So this person who's asking questions say, what can I do to make sure all of my paperwork is in order before I get there? Well, I referred him to our website at prisonprofessors.com on the subject matter expert page, where I recently interviewed a warden who recently retired. And that warden told us, his name is Scott Finley, what he told us is that now the BOP has updated its data entry system. So no longer are they waiting for this to be delivered in a packet, in an envelope, but their computer system is tied directly to U.S. probation and to the U.S. Marshals. And so right after sentencing, or when the person is, all the information goes to the Bureau of Prisons, the pre-sentence investigation report, the judge's statement of reasons, and the judgment of commitment all get automatically uploaded. So that problem that was the case when I was going through a prison is no longer a problem. So that was the first question. He asked a second question about, how do I get the best bed assignment? Well, the best bed assignment is subjective. So some people want to be in an area close to their friends. Some people want to be in a bed area that's in a specific area of the housing unit. But it's, you're not checking into the Ritz-Carlton, right? You're going into federal prison. And if we understand that, we can kind of get our mindset right for some of the complications that follow. Now, typically what happens is somebody goes into like a receiving area, particularly in minimum security camps. So in a minimum security camp, the person will go into a receiving area, and he will remain in that area for a period of time until the bunk opens. And during that interim period, which can last maybe a week, maybe 2 weeks, that individual is going to find somebody with whom he is compatible. And if he finds somebody with whom he is compatible and there's a bunk open, then the counselor, he would put a request into a counselor, and the counselor would move him. Now, sometimes, like anywhere else in America, lobbying kind of helps. So while you're there, if you have good assessment skills or critical thinking skills, you're going to be able to find who are the people of influence in that unit, in that area. And they may have influence with a counselor and said, oh, can you help my friend move to my bunk? That's sometimes easier. That can sometimes facilitate the move. At the same time, it's important to realize this is prison. And there are some counselors that are not there, don't feel it's their job to make things easier for people who are serving sentences in federal prison. And so what's more important than figuring out how do I get the best bed assignment, what you really have to be thinking about is, how do I get there, assess the environment where I'm living, keep my eyes open, and observe. And I think that's the best approach, is to be, I always say, use the analogy of saying being a submarine. So you want to have your periscope up and see everything going around you, but you want to be under the water and just kind of treading through there, observing, seeking to understand before you seek to be understood, as Stephen Covey said in his book, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. To succeed in prison is really the same thing that it takes to succeed anywhere else in society. You've got to be aware of your environment. You've got to define success. You've got to figure out, okay, what's important here? I've got to understand what can I control, what don't I control. And the more I understand about that, the better off I'm going to be. So the best bed bunk pass is sometimes assigned by seniority rather than merit in the prison system. An example, when I was in Fort Dix, New Jersey, as I wrote about in Earning Freedom, there's more than 2,000 people in that institution, and the institution had a lot of dormitories. Some of them had 12-man dormitories, some of them had 8-man dormitories, some of them had 6-man dormitories, and some of them had 2-man rooms. So the 2-man room was certainly, in my view, the best bunk in the entire unit. But not every 2-man room is equal. Some of them were bigger. Some of them were closer to a bathroom. Position-wise, it's good as well. So there's a lot to consider and take in when somebody is going into prison. The first thing to take in is to understand all prisons are different. All prisons are local. There's always going to be a lot of influence on behalf of a staff member. And so it becomes very important to be thinking, how am I going to influence these people? So some people are going to be lucky, just like some people are lucky in life. They win a lottery. They are born into a really good-looking family with super high intelligence and high net worth, right? I mean, there's always going to be differentiators in prison. The real key to understand is, how do I maneuver my way around that environment to get the best possible outcome? The focus isn't on making your life comfortable in prison. The focus should be on, how do I get out of here as quickly as I possibly can? And so I would caution anybody going into prison to be thinking in that way. How do I get a bottom bunk pass? Well, the easiest way, or the surest way to get a bottom bunk pass, is to start at the pre-sentence investigation report. If you can document that in that pre-sentence investigation report that you have medical conditions that would require a lower bunk, you can do such things as use it to influence a counselor or a case manager. And if they don't give you a lower bunk, but it is shown that for medical reasons you need a lower bunk, then you could proceed through administrative remedy and get the relief that, or work toward getting the relief that you want. The challenge, of course, is you're always dealing with somebody else who has control over your life. And of course, you're dealing with the complexities of a crowded prison. Now, in light of the CARES Act and the First Step Act in federal prison, there are a lot more bunks available than there were when I was in prison. It's not as crowded as it used to be. So a person with good diplomatic skills can probably navigate his way to a lower bunk pass, but that's not always the ideal situation. If you have an upper bunk pass, people aren't going to be sitting on your bed, for example, when they come to visit you, which can be the bed can be used as a sofa if there's a little couch and people come in there. And if you're on the higher bunk, that's not going to happen. But some people who need a lower bunk and want a lower bunk, they are going to have to find a lower bunk, and it may be a lower bunk in one area is not as desirable as an upper bunk in another area, because maybe you want quiet. Maybe you want to be next to somebody with whom you're compatible, but that person might be on the lower bunk and has been in prison a lot longer than you. So it's not like outside in the real world where you could choose, you have more liberty. In prison, you have a lack of liberty. What is the next question that he asked me? Is it possible to accomplish both without seeming needy? Probably not. Not at the first day you get there. The real key to success in prison is to go in there, have your eyes wide open, try and understand what's going on, and figure out a pathway to say, okay, how am I going to define success in here? What is it I am trying to do? If you go in there and the first thing you're doing is, I want a lower bunk and I want to be here, and what's the best one here? That is needy. By definition, that is needy. And it's going to have ancillary consequences, because you're going to be seen as somebody who feels entitled, rather than somebody who's just saying, hey, I'm in prison. Let me take a dose of humility and figure out how to get through this. He's referring to somebody that was on our team that we removed because of his misrepresentations. But he asked, Sam said something about sneakers versus boots. What's the story with this? Well, sneakers are much more comfortable to wear. Typically, the Bureau of Prisons will issue a pair of work boots to people who surrender, and or heavier shoes, steel-toed shoes, because some jobs require steel toes. So it's always more comfortable to wear sneakers, but the prison doesn't issue sneakers. So you have to buy sneakers in the commissary. And sometimes the commissary, it has supply chain issues, so there's not sneakers involved. So what we would recommend that a person does is surrender with a pair of kind of white basic sneakers. Remember, in federal prisons there are no colors. It's just everything's just white and gray. It doesn't mean if you surrender with a pair of sneakers that the administrators are going to let you in, but there are some prisons, particularly ever since COVID began, when commissaries became more scarce, that they have allowed people to surrender with a pair of moderate sneakers. So nothing with bubbles on them, I would recommend. Just a pair of sturdy sneakers that you would be comfortable throwing away. That's kind of the story of sneakers in federal prison. You could also buy more comfortable boots than the government issue boots, but again, there's a supply chain challenge in prison, and sometimes the shoes you have to order them, or they're not in stock, and it can be a wait. The good news is that typically people in prison want to help others, and you'll find somebody who has empathy for you, and they'll have an extra pair of sneakers and they'll lend them to you, which is kind of weird out here in society to think that you would wear somebody else's sneakers or shoes. But in prison, you are just trying to make your life as comfortable as you possibly can. Now he asks here, is CARES based off of net or gross at the federal prison? Well, CARES Act is a legislation or an act signed by that authorized that the Attorney General signed. Well, President Trump signed it first, then of course President Biden had to sign it. It authorized the Attorney General to grant more discretion to the Director of the Bureau of Prisons that encourages when a person can transition to home confinement or to a community-based center. But the purpose of CARES, remember, is to lower the potential of spread of the virus. Okay, it's not to help people get out of prison. That's not their goal. Their goal is to keep society safe. And so we've got to think, how does this work? There are the law, the CARES Act. It authorizes the director or a warden or the Bureau of Prisons to send somebody to serve a sentence wherever that person wants. So that means the person there were people that had 10 years and they went to home confinement and served several years on home confinement, like 7 years on home confinement, So, this is all evolved. After the CARES Act was implemented, where you had complete discretion to the Bureau moved forward and put a series of memorandums out that we published on our website at Prison Professors, and those memorandums gave guidelines. And those guidelines were, if somebody had a sentence of 18 months or less, the guideline was that after that person had served 25% of the sentence, the warden by himself could transition that person to home confinement. That would be the guideline. If the person had more than 18 months, then it would be 50% of the sentence, and the person would would be eligible to transition to home confinement. But that is a discretion of the warden. It is not a right on behalf of the person serving the sentence. That's important to remember. The other thing to remember is that when those two guidelines are less than 18 months or more than 18 months, and the percentages, it says of the sentence. So the sentence is what the judge imposed, but of course they have discretion. So when it's the way that this question is written, is CARES based off of net or gross at a specific sentence? Well, it's based off of the CARES Act and how the Bureau of Prisons is going to interpret it. The warden typically is going to interpret it based on the sentence length. If somebody goes outside of the guidelines, then the next step would be to go to the Correctional Programs Division in Washington, D.C., which completely changes the equation. And for more information on that, I would encourage people to watch my interview with the former acting director, Hugh Hurwitz, which is on the subject matter extra page of our website at prisonprofessors.com. Does First Step Act reduce time under CARES? Well, that question is not coherent, right? So the First Step Act is a law that both both bodies of Congress approved. It had wide bipartisan support. President Trump signed it in 2018, and it has been a really long rollout where just January the 9th, 2023, the Bureau of Prisons just started to implement a policy to apply earned time credits. Up until then, it has been a problem. And many people, despite the law being passed in 2018, was it 18? I think it was 18. It's taken, or was it? I think it was 18. It's taken a really long time to get it rolled out. Yeah, it was December of 2018. So more than 4 years, it's taken a really long time to get rolled out. But the First Step Act is fundamentally different from the CARES Act. So First Step doesn't reduce time under the CARES Act. It's the other way around. The First Step Act allowed the CARES Act to exist. That's what the Attorney General cited when he gave more discretion to the Director of the Bureau of Prisons, opening opportunities for somebody to leave. So we've got something else here. Next question. If I'm released on CARES, can I continue to reduce my sentence on home confinement in any way, or must I complete the full sentence? Well, if you're not released on CARES, right? CARES doesn't release you from your sentence. What CARES does is it allows the warden or the Correctional Programs Division to authorize you to serve your sentence on home confinement or in a halfway house. That's fundamentally different from being released from prison. So you're not released on CARES. You're still serving your sentence. You just may be able to serve it at home, which is far superior than serving it in prison. So can I continue to reduce my sentence on home confinement in any way, or must I complete the full sentence? You can still earn the time credits that is going to reduce your sentence. You're still going to get the reduction in time that you owe to the Bureau of Prisons. So all of those things still apply. You're still serving your sentence. Remember, when somebody gets sentenced, they get sentenced to the custody of the Attorney General. The Attorney General delegates that to the Director of the Bureau of Prisons. And the Bureau of Prisons executes the sentence in accordance with the judge's order. So under CARES, many people are serving their sentences in home confinement. And I hope to see that program expand. But that's an important differentiator, is that you're not being released. You're still serving your sentence, and you still have all of the benefits of serving your sentence. What should I bring for my central file? Well, we create this release plan that's on our website that we really encourage people to learn about, where you would bring your driver's license or a photographed copy of your driver's license, your social security card, your birth certificate copy. You cannot bring your PSR. The pre-sentence investigation report is prohibited from being used inside of prisons because a lot of people use it for nefarious reasons. So you can't bring your PSR. That would be a disciplinary infraction. Definitely your doctor's letter with conditions and pharmaceutical list you want to bring. And if you have reading glasses or prescription glasses, you would want to bring those too. Highly recommend that you get a sturdy pair of glasses, not designer frames that can easily be broken and that potentially may not be allowed into the institution. They'll typically require you to say that the glasses are worth less than $100. And, there's very little that's worth less than $100, prescription especially. But that's what you want to bring with you in prison, sturdy glasses. Docs for me upon surrender will fall by email, contact list, release plan, handbook. Yes, definitely bring your contact list, your release plan. You don't need a handbook because they'll give you a handbook once you get there. In fact, it's going to be one of the requirements. They give you that in order to hold you accountable to the disciplinary infraction code. So you don't have to bring a handbook, but you do have to bring your contact list so that you know people's names, people's phone numbers, people's address, because you'll probably forget that. I mean, sometimes I forget my own wife's phone number because, you just push a button, a link here on your phone, and we forget the phone numbers. So definitely bring that, but also take a precaution of mailing it to yourself in the event that staff members will not allow that in. Next is doctor's letter and optical RSFCO trashes. Docs for me upon surrender with follow-up by mail. Yeah, definitely. I would send the letter in. The CO is not going to trash your glasses. If you have glasses that the CO doesn't want you to receive, and the CO means correctional officer, I think that's a very unlikely scenario. You would just ask him to leave it with the medical staff, and have the medical staff then issue it to you. But I'm sure that you're going to be able to have your glasses. What contact information should I add to Core Links for Earning Freedom? So that's a great question, but the answer is Earning Freedom. No, it's Core Links. So just spell Core Links at earningfreedomcorp.com. And I'll write that in an email. That's specifically for people that hire our team, and this person is a client. And I respond to those emails. How do I work on a release plan in prison? Well, you just continue to write. You document your journey. You document what you're going to do, what you've been doing. You're showing that you are iterating and you are making progress. You really want to be working to demonstrate that you didn't just stop preparing for success when you came in and tuned out, dropped out, and started keeping up with the Kardashians. You want to be focused always on success, because there are going to be people who judge you that you don't know and that don't know you, and they are going to be looking at your release plan and making assessments. Those aren't my words. Those are the words of, it's in the CARES Act. It's in the First Step Act. It is something that we interviewed John Gustin, the former head of halfway houses and home confinement, about, and former wardens and former directors. The release plan is something that administrators at every stage in the justice system are going to consider. So what does attached by email mean in a sample release plan? I don't know. I'm going to have to look at that template and see what he means by that. Let's go on. How did Scott and you run blogs in prison? I didn't think there was any digital. Well, while you're in prison, you do have access to this kind of quasi-Core Links, quasi-email system. It's called Core Links. When I was in prison, I did not have access to that. So I used that really nice technology called a piece of paper and a pen, and I would write my blogs and send them home to my wife, and she would type them and publish them on my website. So of course, now there is a Core Links system, and people get to use a quasi-email system, and they can write what they'd like and send it to us, to our team, and we have a team that takes those blogs and publishes them on an individual's website. That's what happened with Scott. So you do have something digital. It's just very different. It's an abbreviated version of what we take for granted out here in society. I'd like to take as many classes as possible, but for example, wouldn't taking any anger management class make the unit team that I have a previously undiscovered anger management problem? I think it's more important that you focus on taking classes that the unit team recommends that will help you earn the credits. The unit team is going to recommend some classes, but some of them are going to be very indifferent and apathetic, and they just have to check a box. So you want to take the classes that are available and that qualify for earned time credits under the First Step Act and under the Bureau of Prisons approved programs, which of course we publish on our website, but you're going to get a lot of insight on as soon as you surrender to prison. Will you send me a journal so that I can document daily? Absolutely. I'll send you one of our workbooks, which we feature on the resources tab of our website. You can see they're soft cover books and all kind. There's actually a course. In fact, I have one right here. So it looks kind of like this, right? This is a daily journal. It's got a course. It's got places for you to write, and it just shows the strategy of really memorializing a journey, and that of course could become and should become a part of your release plan. Don't worry about somebody judging you for taking classes. That's actually a proactive thing to take classes. It demonstrates your commitment to preparing for success. How will we be allowed to communicate upon my release? Mine is that felons cannot associate. They cannot associate without permission from the probation officer. So my whole business has always been about communicating with other formerly incarcerated people and helping those people navigate their pathways to success. So you would just communicate that to your probation officer, and your probation officer would have the discretion to allow you to communicate with me. And I look forward to communicating with you, because part of our commitment to people in our community is to help them navigate their way toward early termination of supervised release. So that's a simple response to the questions that somebody asked me. I thought since they were such good questions, I'd make a video and an audio file and publish it on our various channels, not only in the Prison Professors website, but also on our YouTube channel and on our iTunes podcast. I do hope that it's valuable to you. My name is Michael Santos. If you're listening to this on iTunes or YouTube, please subscribe to us and visit our website at prisonprofessors.com, where we provide an abundance of information to help people prepare for the journey ahead. Thanks so much. Bye.